Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Budget Gamer, the show where I go through my first impressions of a very cheap or free-to-play game, which will take up a large amount of your time, because we all don't have as much money as we used to. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Poxnora, currently by Sony Entertainment, but originally developed by a company called Octopi Entertainment, which was absorbed into Sony. I will say before we start that the first half of the footage in the background has been sped up. Due to the turn-based nature of the game, there is a lot of time when nothing has actually happened, so I've removed a lot of the waiting in the footage in the background for the first half, and in the second half I've actually left it in so you can actually see what the game is actually like to play. So without any further ado, let's get started. Poxnora is a difficult game to describe. It's part collectible card game and part strategy game, a bit like chess, so I guess you could call it a cross between chess and a collectible card game. There appear to be 8 different factions, and the different factions all have different runes or cards at their disposal, and they also have different faction bonuses, and these can be either split faction or full faction. For example, the Underdepths has a lot of demons at disposal, and their faction bonus is that all their champions gain plus 4 damage. However, if you were to split this in half and have only half of your deck as Underdepths runes, then you would only gain 2 damage for all champions, but that would affect the champions from the other faction that you cut it with as well. There's a lot of strategy involved in actual deck composition, because there are 4 different types of rune. There's champions, spells, relics, which you deploy on the field and they just stay there, and there are equipment which can be equipped to champions. Champions and magics are fairly self-explanatory what they are. All these champions, a lot of them seem to have unique abilities that are unique to them, which makes the game a nightmare to balance, but from what I can tell, Sony Entertainment seem to have done a great job with the balancing of the game. While there are certain deck types which are stronger, with this many runes and combinations available, that's really going to be inevitable. The balance seems to be really quite good, because from what I can see, there's no particular deck type which is all-powerful, all-dominating, and if you don't play this deck type you will definitely lose. It's really well balanced. There are a variety of different deck types, and all the factions seem to have a decent stake in the metagame at the moment, which is really quite impressive when you think about it, because there are nearly 2,000 different runes in the game, all of which have some fantastic artwork to accompany them, as would be expected by any decent CCG. As to how the game mechanics actually work, all champions gain action points at the beginning of your turn, and a faster champion will gain more action points than a slower champion, as you might expect. And as you might expect, these action points are spent to move, attack, and activate abilities. So it all seems really tight in the way the mechanics function. However, one thing I will say, and this is the main reason that the footage in the background have been sped up a little bit, there is a lot of calculation involved. For example, if I want to move my champion up and attack, I should count the number of squares in between my champion and their champion, and then do a little bit of mathematics to make sure I can actually attack and kill them. There's quite a lot of calculation involved, especially at the high level of play. Now, I don't know whether this is the reason why turns take so long. There seems to be a lot of time when absolutely nothing is happening. Whether this is a problem with the servers or the code, or whether it's simply the other player calculating, I'm not sure. However, it is one of the most infuriating factors of the game. Another infuriating factor of the game, especially when you're starting out, is once you've actually bought cards for real money, then you can actually level up these cards, and these cards gain battle experience, and they can gain different abilities and stats by spending that experience on those abilities and stats. Unfortunately, this means that as a new player, you could easily come up against a player who actually has leveled up their deck, and you could be better than them. You could have exactly the same deck composition as them, but because they've been playing with cards that they actually own, they've upgraded their champions, and so you can lose by that. I can see why it's there, but it is very frustrating to lose a game purely because your opponent has played a few more games with those cards. They could make a lot of mistakes, but because their runes are upgraded, they just beat you in every engagement. And that just isn't fair as far as I'm concerned. As far as I'm concerned, if you're playing a card game or even a strategy game, you should be able to face your opponent on an even field. And don't think I'm rebelling against a collectible card game model. I played a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Back when I was a kid, and so I'm perfectly used to losing a game because they had a card which completely screwed me over. I am perfectly fine with that. What is not fine is when an opponent has played a few more games than you, and hence, even with less strategy, they can beat you purely because they've played a few more games. And it doesn't come down to player skill in that regard. Their runes are just harder and better and tougher than yours. And that's one of the most annoying things about the game. The learning curve on this game is so steep that it has an overhang. The reasons for this are, in my opinion, 2.5 to 3-fold, depending on whether you deem the second reason a full reason on its own. The game has approximately 2,000 different runes, and all of these runes have unique abilities and effects, a lot of the champions having multiple unique abilities of their own. As if the sheer number of abilities wasn't enough, some of the descriptions aren't actually very good and are very difficult to understand. This means that it's very difficult to learn all the abilities of your own deck, let alone the opponent's on the fly. Second reason, which links to the first, is the combat log. Unfortunately, the combat log doesn't show everything which happens, which you really want it to do. There's no way to extend it so you can see more than perhaps the last action. And the scrolling system is really bad because whenever anything happens at all, it always zooms down to the bottom, which is very unfortunate if you're trying to find out why one of your champions is affected by a certain ability or effect. You find yourself asking a lot of the time, well, why is that happening? What did he do? Why is my champion now dead? And there's no explanation for it in the game, which makes it really difficult to get into. The last reason is the lobby system used to make games. For making games between friends, it's perfectly fine. However, if you want to get a match against somebody of a similar skill level to you, it's very inefficient and very ineffective. A player who hasn't played a ranked game but had played 10,000 unranked games could be matched up against somebody who was playing their very first game ever. This, in my opinion, is a massive black mark against the game. If I play a game, especially a strategy game, I want to be able to play against somebody with my kind of skill level. And unfortunately, Poxnora just doesn't have the capability to do that. Even in ranked play, you often get matched up against players who are way ahead of you in terms of the ranking. It's all a real shame because I can see the game being incredibly fun. Card games, for me, have always been addictive. Again, that combined with the fact the strategy elements work really well, could make this a fantastic game. However, the financial investment to get an equivalent deck, combined with the steep learning curve, makes it really difficult to recommend on that basis. The free-to-play system just doesn't endear itself to me, which is a real shame. If you're running a game in the free-to-play model, then the free-to-play portion of the game should endear itself to the customer, should show this game is incredibly fun, but you can buy this to get extra fun. But unfortunately, Poxnora just doesn't do that, which is a real shame as far as I'm concerned. And for those reasons, I just can't recommend it. If you've liked this video, please comment, like and subscribe. It helps my channel grow, and hopefully I'll see you next time on Budget Gamer.